Welcome to Technologies Now, the Business Edge. Today's guest is Kristian Pettyjohn, founder and CEO of Agent Up and Photo Up, twin platforms that empower real estate professionals with next-gen tools for media, marketing, back-office operations, and transaction workflows. Agent Up, trusted by over 3,000 real estate professionals since 2012, offers everything from AI-enhanced photo editing to virtual staging to property websites, listing coordination, transaction coordination. What don't you do? And virtual assistants. So,
We
Kristian,
do a
welcome to
lot.
the show.
Hey, thanks so much, David. Good to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for joining us. So, Kristian, take us back to the beginning. I think Photo Up was first. What was a specific
Yeah.
aha moment that led to, solving this problem with real estate marketing?
Yeah. Way back in the day, I grew up in Alaska and I joined KW as an agent, right out of college and had a good run, worked on a high volume team. But just realized that I wanted to be more on the technology side of things. And so I went off to start my own little web development company. And a couple of years into it, I had, a buddy give me a shout who was a real estate photographer actually and said, hey, I need some help editing. Is that something you guys do? And on a very kind of random note, I ended up in the Philippines one year living and working. And I said, yeah, I could probably hire a couple people while I'm out here and, just kind of connect the dots. And it started with one person and today we're 200. So it's just been kind of a slow, steady growth curve over the last, 10, 15 years now.
200. So what fate led you to the Philippines where you were there, where you had this need and you grew your business there? Because everyone's in the Philippines pretty much. Is that correct?
Not everybody, but our back offices. Yeah. So I would say about 190 are in the Philippines and 10 are in the U.S. So certainly the majority of our team. Yeah. Why I ended up there, I feel like more than anything it picked me than I picked it. I was literally working in my web development company. I was on some deadlines and trying to hire someone local on Craigslist and had already tried outsourcing and sworn it didn't work and didn't want to do it. And I had someone inquire. His background looked really good and he was from the Philippines. And I said, I don't really have much option. I'm not getting anyone locally that can really fit my needs for this project. And so I gave him a try. And 6 months later, I moved to the Philippines because he was so much fun to work with. And to this day, has been the best developer I've ever hired and is our VP of engineering. So, yeah, it's just kind of luck.
Fantastic. Sounds like some good synergy there over the years. That is awesome.
It's been really fun. And I think kind of a really nice side twist off of all of it is along the way, we just brought on some pretty amazing people, of course, both on the U.S. side as well as the Philippines side. But a big part of our business now is social impact as well, the Philippines being a developing country, no matter where we operate, because we also have about 50 contractors that we use in various different countries as well. So when there's typhoons or whatever might be, we can stay operational all the time. It's just really fun to do good work with good people and try to take care of everyone you work with. It's pretty fun.
That's interesting. So what challenges have you run into having this cross-continental, or do you even call it that, across the world, all these teams? How do you guys stick together? How do you make this work?
Yeah. I mean, for a long time, I spent 6 months a year in the Philippines and just went back and forth. And that kind of stopped at COVID, kind of forced a reshuffling in how we operate. We went a lot more remote. And 5 years post, I think a lot of people have come back to office, and we still have an office in the Philippines, but a lot of our team wanted to stay remote, and so we decided to let them stay remote. Internet's developed nicely, and we think that works really well. I'm also a big believer that big teams don't work, small teams work. So, we kind of organize in groups of 10 people across the organization. We're very horizontal. Anyone can talk to me or anyone else in the company. And that seems to work pretty well as we've scaled.
That's really interesting. So did you try to keep everyone together into one group as it grew and you realized you needed like the teams or whatever you call them to make that, that function better? Just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I guess we've gone through a few iterations as we've grown, right? There seems to be a trend that at like 30 people and 100 people and 200 people, there's kind of different fluctuations in how team structures work. For us, it's just, we got big into big teams and lots of middle management, and one day we realized we were just bloated and there wasn't good communication and clients weren't as happy, and so we said, we're just in the way. We're just scared of letting our clients talk to our staff. So we said, let's get out of the way. And we just connected our team directly to clients, and then everyone's much happier.
So you had to set your own ego aside. You don't seem like an egomaniac per se at all, but you still had to set your ego aside and give control to other people to make it work better. Is that accurate?
Yeah, certainly our fear, I would say, more than control, right? I really believe in empowering people. I'm not a micromanager at all. But I think we're just scared, and not so much that like people would leave or take clients, just you don't know. There's language barriers, there's cultural barriers, and they do become problems from time to time. But on the whole, we hire great people, and the people that we work with as clients are good, real people. And when you connect those dots, people just want to work together, right? And as long as you're providing that value point, it really isn't that complex, I think.
All right. I'll try not to make it sound more complex than it is. But speaking of complex and solving problems, talk about your companies. Tell us what they do.
Yeah. We started PhotoUp, and its bread and butter is photo editing. We started 13 years ago just editing photos predominantly for real estate photographers. I think over that 13 years, real estate photographers have really become like media pros more than just photographers. So we kind of grew with them as that dynamic changed. So we got into virtual staging, and we edit drone photos and videos, and increasingly we're doing AI photo to video type technology. We built single property websites and virtual tour software. So we just kind of whatever we could support photographers with, that then we're supporting agents to really help marketing of listings. That's what PhotoUp is, and it's always really been aimed at being a pro level product. And about 3-4 years ago, we just had a big influx of agents coming into the platform, and maybe it was COVID driven. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but not a small influx. Like half the users started becoming agents. And if you've ever been an agent in our PhotoUp platform, you would quickly find that it's really complicated. Like there's just lots of pro features for pro photographers that make no sense if you just want to do, some quick AI photo editing, for instance. And so we decided at that time, it was time to simplify the product and build a whole dedicated platform just for agents. While we always want to support pro photographers, and we're a big believer that there will always be a space for the pros, the majority of agents take their own photos and do their own listing marketing from beginning to end. Or even if they hire a photographer, they're still doing a lot of aspects of the marketing. So that kind of naturally led us into, hey, let's simplify what we have. Let's take everything we've already built and create it for agents. And once we launched the platform, well, we do have hundreds of agents that sign up every month and use AI photo editing or AI virtual staging, and that's been a success. We just felt like there's a bigger need to help operationally to help agents grow and scale, because really what we're doing is the marketing side of things. And so we felt like there was a bigger pain point in managing transactions, and where agents really fail to grow, in my mind, is two spots. It's getting leads, and once they have enough transactions going, how do they not take their foot off the lead generation pedal? And so we launched a transaction coordination service, which is our main second piece of the agent up business that we focus on now.
That is interesting. So how has the technology that has evolved allowed you to do this?
Yeah, tech right now is moving obviously both really fast and also, sifting out the hype from the reality of what really AI is right now is the trick. I think the first couple of years, it started out as fear of AI is going to do everything for us. And then I think it turned into, it really can't do a lot, but there is things increasingly that it's really helpful for. Writing listing descriptions, increasingly editing photos or doing virtual staging. There can be pros and cons to that technology depending on how agents deploy it. But I think ultimately for us, we're choosing to embrace that technology. I think the next really big step that we're kind of in the evolution of right now is transaction coordination. There's a lot of tech integrated into complex contracts and forms that AI isn't fully, reliable enough currently to sift through, but it is improving. And so we kind of, whether it's be photo editing for pros or transaction coordination for agents, we're really taking a hybrid model where we're wanting a human that is a professional transaction coordinator on the US side, or a photo editor on the Philippines side, to, even if we run it through AI to get some of that initial information or editing done, we want a professional looking at it, doing a once over, and we do catch errors in the AI. So it's a tool right now to help us be faster and more efficient, turn around things faster for clients, which I think is a big win. But I think there's always going to be a space to have humans in the loop as well.
Yes. No, there's still a value with the human touch. Real estate agents and brokers that I talk to, when they're talking about AI, that, it can only do so much. You still have to be a person. In fact, with all the technology you're using, you still need to know how to work with people. The social skills they're afraid is, are hiding behind, people rewriting their emails with AI, and everything they do, you still have to be able to have a conversation, or the
Yeah,
interaction, even if it's, lots of texting and things. It doesn't matter. You need to have that personal touch to make it all work. So
I think
you feel
that's
like,
completely right.
yeah, yeah. So the fact that you have actual humans, in the background, of course, using technology, because we're always going to leverage technology for smart about our businesses. Um, do you see that changing to where we're going to have, transaction coordinators that are AI bots, just very advanced? Is that 5 year? I know it's not your plan, perhaps, but in 5 years,
Yeah,
would this be the case?
it could be in part. I think one of the nice things about real estate is that it is encompassing a physical space that ultimately technology can't fully go. Maybe robots will change that in 10 years, but for now, you need an agent to open doors and to sit down at the table and meet people. And when it's someone's, most expensive transaction of their life, there's just a lot on the line that just to hand something over that we know is error prone as it is, even if it's 5% of the time, you don't want to mess up $1 million contract 5% of the time. That's a quick way to go out of business. So I think we will increasingly see pieces of it become more streamlined. And I actually think that's really welcome, especially in the technology side of things. I think, if anything, it's just going to enable agents to do more deals. I don't think it's going to take away transaction, the need, I guess, of an agent to be in the transaction still, though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So just back that up a little bit and think about your space and technology. Do you see other opportunities for technology to not take roles? That's probably the wrong way to put it, but to play a better role in, can you get to the point where someone can push a button and then the drone shows up to take the pictures? I mean, can, maybe the professional eye shows up, it's a professional photographer, but they're using some remote service to make sure they're getting the angles correct for the different rooms. And you see something,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm going to fantasy land perhaps, but you kind of see something's going to happen like this, it seems like.
Yeah, increasingly there's going to be more efficiency in the space, particularly I think with communication and organization. So I see a lot more advances in the administration and the communication side of real estate than I do in the physical spaces. Can you have a drone fly over and take a photo of a house? Possibly. There's some pretty interesting regulation around drones that really don't allow you to do that very easily. And so I think for the most part, we're still going to have photographers showing up and taking photos. And I think anytime there's complexity, as there is in real estate, you have agents, buyers, sellers, title, or attorneys involved, and media professionals. There's just so many moving pieces, and every deal is so unique that I think it's about efficiency in the administration more than the physical spaces at this time.
No, that makes sense to me. I wasn't trying to get too hyped up on it. I'm just interesting to hear perspectives on people, because there are people that think all sorts of things are going to happen into the future, and
I mean, maybe in like 20 years, sure. I think actually robotics are advancing way faster than we think they are or see them. AI's had all the hype, but robotics is right behind it. And that, has a lot of really interesting implications. I think if there's one thing that I've taken away from the last 5 years with AI and tech, and specifically, is that there's a lot of hype. There's certainly real value being created, but it's slower than maybe we initially thought or feared. I think it's actually developing at a really nice pace. 5 years in, we're having time as businesses to adopt technology, find where it actually adds value, and it's becoming much more of a value add than it is a total disruptor. So could that change? Perhaps, but these things, again, are so complex that I think the speed of change is so far been at a level that's actually been very complementary to business interests, more than going to be replacing a lot of jobs.
No, that is very interesting. I agree. It has been adopted and used just to benefit us, I think, so far quite well.
Yeah.
On the robotics side, a little side story I heard it was an NPR news show of some sort, talking about how this house cleaning robot was available. Do anything around the house that you wanted.
Yeah.
The only problem was I think it took 5 minutes to pour 2 glasses of water, so it's, the concept is there, right? But it just didn't know how to pick up the pitcher of water, just some quirky things, right? But as they test it, it gets better, and that's the right progress. If all of a sudden a robot shows up in your house that can clean your entire house, it's going to scare the dog and the cat and all the people inside, so gotta work on our pace of adoption at the pace it is, advancing.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's much more revolution than evolution, or evolution than revolution, right? Like it's
that's well put.
iterative.
Thank you. That's a good soundbite. That's really well put. Thank you, Christian.
Yeah.
So your company and companies clearly have a social mission. Tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, anytime you work in developing countries, you're faced with just things that we don't see as often, in the US or Western countries as often. And income disparity is probably the biggest, right? And people, there's income that's relative to cost as well. Things are much more expensive in America. And so it's more apple to oranges than it is apples to apples. But in the end, access to healthcare and good paying jobs more than anything are the hardest things to come by, at least in the Philippines. And so in part, that's just population growth there has been pretty, I'd say it's outpaced development. And so it's just, there's more demand for jobs than there is supply of them. And so that keeps wages down or the lack of jobs available overall. And so I'm a big believer in education. First and foremost, and employment are the ways to really help society move forward from a social economic standpoint. And so those are really our two big metrics are, can we provide jobs, especially if people didn't have them before, and the training or education therein to help support them to get those jobs. So, and right now, honestly, it's for at least the photo editing side of our business, AI is actually cutting into jobs. And so we're kind of retraining and retooling people to be more of that hybrid workflow of like, hey, AI is going to edit the photo first and then you're going to review. Because what we're actually finding, because we process millions of photos a year, right? So on average right now, the best AIs are doing about 70% success rate in terms of what a pro photographer at least would accept and deliver to a client, which is pretty impressive actually. However, it's still a lot of photos not being edited correctly that needs the human. So we're trying to, build more flexible plans into how we manage that, as well as teach, our photo editors how to do other things like virtual staging or transaction coordination support services or so on and so forth. Yeah, it's a challenge. But from a social standpoint, our goal is to keep and build as many jobs as possible wherever we operate. Currently, we have employees in, the Philippines, the U.S., Canada, and then about 7 other Asian countries for contractors. So it's just about providing the best pay we can, providing full health care for our staff and their dependents, we think are some of the most important items. We do other smaller community impact projects from time to time, but I really think the best impact we can have is just be a really good employer, right? Which sounds so basic, and so many times you'd be surprised at how people have an incentive to pay as little as possible, right? And obviously we have to be a good business and be cost conscious as well. And we don't want to overpay to local norms that can actually hurt people socially, economically if they build their budgets around a job that later they can't replace. That becomes a pretty big problem as well. So we try to pay on the upper end of local norms and then provide other benefits that we hope provides more security for our staff and their families.
Excellent. Well, it sounds well thought out and well built. With not just the bottom dollar in mind. But of course, you do have to run a business that it's profitable. Otherwise, no one is employed.
Yeah. I mean, one of the big things that we really believe in is what we call the 4 Ps, or some people call it triple bottom line, quadruple bottom line. I feel like there's just too many bottom lines. We just call it the 4 Ps, which is people, planet, profit, and purpose. And in our business, we hold those 4 things equal. So profit, we recognize as the engine and nothing happens without it, but it's not more important than the other initiatives that we have internal.
That's nice. That's really awesome. So along those lines, that's part of your personality coming out. Tell us something interesting about you, things you like to do or something along.
I mean, I've always been fascinated with physical spaces, which is why there's things that I suppose of any industry you work in for 20 years that will infuriate you. But I'm just fascinated with space. Inhabiting physical space, building spaces, interior design, I've always been really interested into. As we got into virtual staging, it was really interesting to really go deep. We built custom furniture from the ground up, thousands and tens of thousands of pieces of furniture, right? And developing styles. And so you go really deep into that. And lately I'm really into construction. So I just rewired my entire house and, we moved and we have a guest house now. So we stripped it down to the studs and just trying to learn how to do it all myself, right? I just think it's really interesting to know and understand all the different parts of our industry. I have literally right next to me a home inspection you know, book that I'm studying right now. I'll probably never be a home inspector, but I want to know what's everything about our spaces. So
Right.
fascinated by that.
That is interesting. So the more you know about all these spaces, the better you're going to be able to serve your clients too. There's no question about that because you just understand it, innately.
Yeah, I think that's right. And you find just interesting opportunities. And I think the biggest thing is just stay curious, right? Like so much of learning is linked to curiosity. And so I think it's one of actually the coolest things about AI right now is a lot of people are trying to figure out, what do I do with business? Do I need it to write an email? And I almost never use AI to write emails actually, which I know is like probably one of its more popular uses. Every time I have a question, I just ask it. And it's like having a PhD in your pocket on every subject. It is so fun. You can learn so fast, so much stuff that used to take so much longer. And whether you're in real estate or you're like, walking through a home and you're going with a home inspector or with a client, you just want to learn more as you go. You have that ability now constantly in your pocket just to have chat or Gemini on your phone, ask a quick question and get an immediate, really good answer. I think it's really cool.
It is like your personal advisor. It's just to give you, a little research advice as you go. As long as you don't rely upon it for your own maybe personal mental well-being. I don't know. Maybe that's where you cut it off just before that. Or who knows? It could be a great therapist. Yes.
I don't use it for that, but I know a lot of people do, and teach their own.
Yes, I agree. Teach their own on that sort of thing. Kristian, if you were giving advice to someone who's starting a company, a tech company, a brick and mortar company, whatever it happens to be, what advice would you give them based on your experience?
I mean, if I could go back 20 years and tell myself, it's realizing when you start a business, doesn't matter what type of business, you're getting into sales. And I don't think I focused enough on that. I focused a lot on the technical side or tried to overcomplicate, all the different systems I could build. And in the end, you just got to sell. You got to be good at marketing and you have to be, have those human skills like we were talking about up front, because that ultimately, I think, is why people choose you, is that human aspect and being really good at that.
Yes, agreed. I had a guest say exactly that. It's like, without sales, you don't have a company. That was the succinct way of putting it, in front of everyone. I couldn't agree more. You get the best product ever, but if you can't get it to anyone and no one's using it, it's not worth anything.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I feel like there's two sides of that coin where like sales is the engine again, but for us, like my executive team and my management team in general, we're big believers that like it doesn't really matter what you do. You'll get bored at the what. You'll get bored selling real estate. You'll get bored building tech. Like at some point, it's just another dollar. We have unlimited wants and limited resources. So for us, it's much more about like, why do we do things and who do we do it with, right? Our human relationships really matter, and our purpose in our work brings a lot more meaning and joy in life once our basic material needs are met. And so, there's a need financially for us all to make $60,000 to $80,000 probably to have our core needs met, at least in America. And after that point, like it doesn't bring material happiness. At least quantitatively, it doesn't, according to research from out of Harvard. And so at that point, it's like, oh, okay, yes. As a business, you need to be successful and focus on sales. But medium and long term, and maybe even in the short term, the motivation has to be different than just money.
Okay. Yes. And to clarify my thought on that, sales isn't just about money. It is about, providing, hopefully you believe in your services that you're providing to your customers. And so if you're not,
that's right.
If you're not offering that to them, then they don't have the opportunity to, benefit from your services. So I would think it's not just money, but connecting these two things together is very important.
Yeah, well, and especially with agents, I think specifically, it's a pseudo commodity. There's 1.5 million, 2 million agents, depending on what number you look at. There's a few, and you can pick a lot, right? And you all offer the same thing. And so I think one thing agents could really do is really learn how to be different in the marketplace, right? In part, maybe there's some more pricing schemes or just some more options that could come out. I recognize that agents don't always have that option depending on their broker, who often controls a bit more of how they get paid or what they're allowed to offer. But certainly at a bare minimum, your value propositions and getting really clear on how you're different from people, which is hard when you sell a commodity effectively, but it can be done. And I think that needs more focus than it's given by agents often.
Oh, interesting. Well, I think we're going to leave it right at that. And this is a good conversation. So, Kristian, thank you for joining us on Technologies Now, the Business Edge. It has been a pleasure to hear your story and hear about Agent Up and Photo Up and how they're reshaping the real estate marketing and operations. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you, David. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely.